I'm seeing our participants are joining. So Raquel Rose here, it's 4 o'clock, and I'm just a couple minutes before we go ahead and get started here. Great, sorry about that. Okay, got 26 participants thus far. So again, I'm just gonna wait one more minute before I go ahead and share my screen with our presentation. And just wanna remind people this is being recorded and we'll post it following the presentation and go from there. Okay, it is almost 4:02 and got 31 people so far. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Great. Okay, so hello everyone. Again, this is Raquel Rose. I'm the new superintendent with the Kentfield School District. Thank you all for being here today. If you've been joining us throughout the summer, you are aware that I've been sharing this slide deck here and just try to update it as the weeks have gone on with information that we have. So I actually don't have a whole lot of new information to share, but I do have quite a few questions that have been coming my way. So at the end, I will be touching on some what I'm considering hot topics and FAQs. So here we go. So first, again, just want to remind people the 4 key areas related to our purpose, just really around planning for the opening of school with a physical and a social emotional, around the social, emotional, and physical well-being of our children, eliminating the achievement gap, and offering a rich, high-quality academic program in whatever physical environment in which we're able to do that, optimizing our financial and human resources, and last but not least, really thinking boldly. This is a time of change. This is a time of uncharted waters. This is a time of uncertainty. And so it's also a time that we get to really think creatively and boldly. And so we are digging in deeply to do that. So I'm going to highlight our local status of the health pandemic and what we know right now based on information I'm getting from the County of Marin Public Health. Talk a little bit about our framework and the operations that our plan is. I know people are still really concerned about not having the schedules yet, and I'll address that in just a bit. Also share a little bit about our staff and community preparedness. So I'm excited to give some updates related to some of the work that has taken place during the course of this week and plans to continue to go into the next couple of weeks. Communication timeline update, and then, like I mentioned, hot topics and FAQs. So a lot to get to today. So just related to where we are locally, so I just want to remind people there's 5 key points that our governor pointed out during the announcement around the pandemic plan for schools. And so one is related to the in-person instruction has to happen with the focus on safety. So as long as we maintain on the state watch list and we stay there, we have to be off of that list for 14 consecutive days before we are able to move towards in-person instruction. Many people are asking me really about the waiver, and I just want to kind of reiterate to folks that yes, I'm aware that there is a waiver that could be applied for. It must be done in consultation with our labor partners, our community-based organizations, as well as our families, and obviously with approval of our local public health. The parameters and the more specifics around the waiver are not released yet. So I don't have additional information just yet. I have tried to do some research and do my due diligence, but there really is nothing available yet for me to look into. And there's just a lot of questions related who can and why people can access those waivers. So I just want you to know it's definitely top of mind, but there are clear procedures and protocols that we'll have to follow, and those have yet to be released. I think people are well aware of the face covering mask requirement. I don't need to go into that. The physical distancing and other adaptations. So I'm excited to share, I shared this last week, you know, if you go to any of our school sites right now, you're going to see we have the sneeze guards, the plexiglass up in our front offices. Right now they're installing the hands-free sanitizer and various types of infrastructure to support us. On Monday, I'm getting the opportunity to meet with our ventilation consultant to hear more about the ventilation in our facilities so that we're sure that we have good airflow happening throughout our classrooms. Regular testing and dedicated contact tracing. So I'm excited to share that I've been in communication with some of our neighboring districts related to some strategies that they're utilizing and outreaching to an agency that may support us in rapid testing that we could have happen locally for us. So I'm looking into that right now. I think it's something that people are very much concerned about. If you get tested, what's the lag time on that? And this is something where you would actually get your results within a 24-hour period of time. So I'm excited about that opportunity and the possibilities there. Last but not least, the notion around rigorous distance learning. And so I will touch base a little bit around the framework and operations and some of the guiding principles that we're utilizing as we're thinking about school opening in the fall. And, you know, I know that people are quite concerned about what it's going to look like and how it's going to feel for your children and the implications that may be there, but just please know, and I hope that you'll have the confidence in us that we are thinking very intentionally, very strategically, and really wanting to do the very best that we can on behalf of your children. A colleague reminded me earlier this week that, you know, we had the experience this past spring, whether people felt that was positive or negative, however, they got to experience it with their children. We're taking all of the feedback and the learning from that opportunity and thinking about how we can continue to hone our crafts and evolve our practices in the best interest of our children. So, those are just, you know, the key points to point out in terms of what's happening here in our community. So you see these numbers, confirmed cases still is going up just a bit, 57 new cases, hospitalizations, only 1 new hospitalization. And then I thought it was interesting, the data point related to testing. So no new testing, but we're getting to test more folks locally. So again, I mentioned that we're gonna hopefully get something happening more locally in the coming weeks. So related to our framework and operations, I just want to remind people again, I kept this here around our key areas that we pulled from our strategic plan that are guiding our planning. And I want to start with the notion around connectedness. And when I say connectedness, I want people to maybe kind of think about that from the perspective of how are we making sure that, one, we're connecting with our students, we're connecting with our staff, we're being sure that we have accessibility there for all of our children, and that we're really providing equitable level of resources. So if a child is struggling or a child doesn't have the access that another child may have, we're really wanting to do our due diligence to be sure that those children get what they need so that they feel connected to our system. And so although we would love to have our children in our campuses, we're just not there right now. And so we need to do everything we can to, in this remote situation, to be sure that we can maintain that connectivity with our students. And just really trying to use that frame as we plan out what that academic day will look like and the instructional day will look like for our kiddos. It related to instructional minutes. And so this question came up last week. I feel like I'm hearing a little bit of a concern related to our minutes and kind of why we might have less instructional minutes during the course of this year. And I explained that the state has waived the annual requirement of instructional minutes, but did require daily instructional minutes. And so we are mirroring that, trying to be as close to a regular academic day as possible. And we are also really trying to maintain a level of continuity. Continuity that would allow us to pivot between in-person, distance learning, hybrid approach based on what our environment allows us to do. And so just know that we are going to be harnessing those minutes very tightly so that we are getting our kids the best that we very can, but we will be aligning with the state required daily instructional minutes. Our focus on essential academic standards. And so just to remind people, you know, their core academics is really where we're going to focus due to having less instructional minutes, but we don't want to lose the I guess, what makes Kentfield so special. And that's the notion that we always do go above and beyond. So not only do we want to be sure we're offering that core instruction, but how are we continuing to maintain our enrichments in an isolated, self-contained way, but also in an integrated way. So our teams are talking right now creatively about how they can make that happen for our children, because we want to continue to ignite that passion, right, and allow for that student voice and choice. And so sometimes it's through those enrichments that's where we can really get kids excited about learning. So please know that those are still part of what we plan to be offering our young children. Next is the notion around social emotional strategies and thinking about how we can embed that into our daily opportunities with kids. And so many might be familiar with morning meetings, advisory time, but really thinking about how we can have social emotional learning or social emotional strategies. You might hear things such as mindfulness or brain breaks for children, but really trying to give them the time to kind of, breathe deeply so that you can approach this challenging problem. I know myself, I take the moment there where I have to just stop, breathe in and think, okay, what do I have to do next, right? And sometimes we just need that to clear our heads. And so we want to be able to provide that gift to our children as well. And last but not least is flexibility, being flexible and nimble so that we can transition when the time is right. I look forward to the day that I get to be on one of the campuses and greet our children. I know it will be here at some point. It's just not here yet. And so I want to stay flexible and nimble. And I know that we're asking a lot of our families to maintain that flexibility and that nimbleness in such an uncertain time. And I appreciate your patience with us. And just please know that if we can just hold on tight and recognize that we're all going through this together, I'm sure that we'll get out on the other side much stronger. So our areas of focus. And so I want to highlight here, this is a slide many of you might have seen already. And this is really about kind of how are we preparing our staff and our community. And I want to highlight what I just mentioned a bit ago related to what we learned in the spring and really trying to leverage that so that we can evolve as educators in this field. And so really taking the feedback that many of you provided in the June timeframe and think about all of that feedback that you gave that told us a little bit about some insight into how you saw your children doing in the distance learning environment. And so trying to take that to inform our planning, also just what the experience was for us. You'll see in a minute when I show you our updated timeline, we are working on a community survey that's going to be going out to get more information from parents. And I'm excited to say that we have over 60 kids that have volunteered to be part of the focus groups. So, so just really trying to listen intently so that we can utilize all of that key information to help us with our planning. It's been loud and clear to me that we want to be sure that we have a unified plan and framework so that we kind of mitigate the situation around confusion for folks, and then being sure that we're being very visible about what those plans and those frameworks look like to our families so that you can help your children. Thinking about platforms, time allocation, etc. Our instructional strategies and approach. I talked about this at our last office hours. The importance of recognizing that, Zoom is one format, it's one mode that we can utilize to help with some live interactive opportunities with kids, but there are other ways that we can instruct our children. And I know for myself, I wouldn't want our children sitting in front of a screen for consecutive hours at a time, wanting them to really explore inside of their home, outside, and be able to do some things independently, but also get that guidance that they need from their teachers. So I do want to just name that part of our distance learning requirement from the state is that we must provide live instruction daily. So you will have that, and the way in which it'll be delivered will be in a variety of ways in terms of whole group, small group, one-on-one. So we're just working through some of those ways in which we can provide that, but we're trying to really be sure that we do it in a uniformed way that's very visible, and so that it can help support families in their own planning. Content and curricular focus. So I highlighted extend and support. I want to be sure that people know that we've got all kinds of learners, right? We've got some kids that may be excelling, some kids that need more of a challenge. We have other kids that might get stumped and need somebody to kind of rub their back, talk with them, help them kind of engage in the discourse in terms of what they're learning and think through how they're approaching a math problem or reading a text. And so we're trying to also, as we think about the ways in which we get to work with our children, is how are we extending their learning? as well as supporting their learning as they actively engage. So, and this really goes to the notion of differentiation and really thinking about meeting the needs of all of our students, not just some, but all of our students. I mentioned a bit ago around the social emotional well-being of our kiddos, the mindfulness, brain breaks. And I also talked about the access piece, right? So I mentioned earlier this notion around connectedness and the importance of access. And what I mean again by access is not just access to a Chromebook or access to the internet, but how is a kid actually accessing and being engaged in their learning, right? So that they feel part of that process. So then what are we doing in an active way to really harness that for our students? And I know there's going to be some kids that might need more support than others, right? Some kids are going to be like tapping their foot and be ready right when that time comes, when they know the Zoom is going to be ready for them. Others, maybe not so much, right? And so we are going to get to know our children, and our counseling team is working on a mental health screener that we're going to be utilizing with our kiddos so that we can have a better temperament on how we can support our children as they embark on this new school year. And then last but not least, parent education and support. And so trying to really think through a comprehensive plan for our parents and our guardians so that you have some guidance in terms of just how do you set up that learning space for your child? And then what are some of the questions you can provide your child when you know that they're reading some form of text? How can you help motivate them to work on some of the math problems that they may have been assigned? So those various kinds of things, really trying to think holistically about how we can offer those supports for parents as you get to navigate this, this new normal as well. So communication timeline and update. So today is July 30th. I can't believe that. We are very close to August 1st. But today I had some staff office hours as well as the community office hours. We've scheduled a DLAC meeting for August 4th, which is next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Next week, my hope is that we will still be able to hold stakeholder information sessions, and then we'll do those by grade level spans. Our site administrators have raised their hand and said that they would be more than happy to help with facilitating those. So we'll be getting that information out to folks shortly. If you're not able to join, we will be providing recordings in follow-up. But just really thinking about doing that in grade level spans, so it could be smaller groups and more targeted. I mentioned a survey. So on August 7th, our hope, fingers crossed, that we'll be able to release an updated community survey to get some feedback from folks and how we can support you and work together as we move into the new school year. And we have a new task force that's come together called our Community Engagement Task Force, and they're really focused on helping create that. As well as the format for our student focus groups. So I'm working on a letter that will be going out to families that have volunteered their children or child, or their child has volunteered to participate in the focus groups. And so our plan is to do that on August 10th. And it's really gonna be for the kids. So our hope is that we get the chance to kind of get to have the child join us in this office hour. We're gonna have some breakout rooms because we have quite a few students and we wanna have small groups, but very excited to get the chance to engage with some of the kiddos. August 13th, again, we'll have staff and community office hours. The week of the 17th to the 21st is our back to school time frame for our staff. And we'll also be providing some more opportunity for information for our parents and guardians. And then the first day of school, August 25th. It is just around the corner now. So we're revving up for sure. Okay, so I have been getting a number of questions and I'm considering them hot topics. I'm considering them obviously questions. And so I thought what I would do is try to just address these head on as I've got folks on the line. We've got about 67 people here, and just to respond to inquiries that are coming my way or things I'm hearing about. So I've kind of put them here in a bubble, but we'll respond to them just kind of at random. So I guess where I'm going to start is, are we thinking boldly around using parents and guardians? And I will say, yes, we are. Unfortunately, I missed a meeting that happened this past Wednesday with some team members who had previously facilitated our school buddies program. And so the idea is, hey, can we do that again? Maybe we can do it in a different way to utilize families. And so tomorrow I'm going to get the opportunity to speak with Christy Chandler, who is supporting that effort, and talk with her a little bit more about how we might leverage that and take some of the learnings from that and expand it or do it a little bit differently to best support our community. That's just one example though. Right. So there are other ways that we could potentially tap into the partnerships with our parents and guardians. And so just know that that is something that's top of mind for us to think about how we can leverage that in this new time frame. What is the hesitation to apply for a state waiver? So I'm down over here in this corner. And so I mentioned earlier is that, yes, there is a state waiver to apply for that our governor put out related to the pandemic plan for schools, but there's still not any real detail or substance related to what is the process beyond just some of the notification that there's consultation that happens with our labor groups, community-based organizations, and our parents. So there's still more information to be had. And quite frankly, I think right now we really need to focus our energy on our distance learning program and putting the energy there for our families. And so that's where I'm focused, but I promise you that I will do my due diligence and pay attention to what are all of the requirements around the waiver and what the process will be. But we just don't have the information to move anything forward on that at this time. Why are childcare programs opening but not schools? So this is, I think a valid question that people are asking. So first I will say childcare programs operate very differently than schools. Their ratios are very different. The types of facilities they operate are different, and their function is different. Their function is to provide care for children. And so they have, I think many might have seen that even during the shelter in place when we were kind of in phase 1, there were these pop-up childcare environments that were being offered for our essential workers. And they maintained a ratio of 1 to 12 due to childcare licensing requirements. And so very small in scale. And so we are seeing those popping up. And I just want people to know, I've been in good communication with our partners, Marin and Richmond. They've been absolutely spectacular. They sent a notice out, I believe on Monday, to families letting them know about what their plan was. And we're working in partnership with them. I actually have a call right after office hours today to talk a little bit more to see kind of what has their enrollment look like. I'm also in conversation with College of Marin. And David Wayne Kuhn, the president there at the college, about space. If the Marin Richmond has the staffing pattern to allow for additional childcare to set up, that would help support our students in distance learning, that maybe we can get some space through the College of Marin that's in close proximity for us. I even asked for field space just in case we needed it so that kids could run about. So just know that it's definitely something that we're looking into and thinking about how we can support our community with those needs. Why don't we have a schedule? What's our timeline? So the reason we don't have a schedule is because we haven't come to a full agreement with our staff about what the schedule will be. I think we're very close, but we are continuing to plan and move forward with what it can look like in the classroom for our students. And so as soon as we have something, we're definitely going to be sharing it. My hope is that we'll have something by next week. And I know that that really is something that parents need to plan for. And so I appreciate your patience. I hear the frustration, but we're doing as best we can. And quite frankly, it's why I'm continuing to put myself out here to make myself available for these office hours and be responsive to folks as they send me communications related to concerns and such. And so just to know that we're working diligently to try to get you the schedule as soon as we can, and we will when the time is right. So my hope is by next week. How are we differentiating support based on student need? So I mentioned before that we want to be sure that what we get to offer our children is something that supports all kids, right? And each learner learns in a different way. And so I mentioned a screener that our counseling team has been working on, and our instructional team is talking about a formative assessment that could be utilized, and going through some inventories and trying to figure out what are some things that we already have, what are some things that we may need to purchase, obviously things that we might have to purchase in digital format based on our current environment. And so just know that we are really acknowledging the importance of trying to garner some formative assessment or screening that will support us in better understanding where our kids are and thinking through how we can best support them, and then providing intentional and targeted supports. And I'll go back to the supports are either if a child needs additional support because they're not grasping a concept, and or supports that would be more enhancement because they need to be more challenged, or they need to be, if we want to say, accelerated. And so just know that we recognize we've got a wide range of students that we get to serve, and we want to be sure that we're thinking through how are we being sure all of their services are being provided. We also have targeted populations of students where they have specific services that they have rights to. So i.e. our English learners, for example, or our students with IEPs, individual education plans. And so please know that we are working diligently with all of our specialist teams that provide supports to those kiddos and wanting to be sure that they're going to get what they need and they deserve and they have rights to. And so trying to do it in a way that it doesn't compromise their core instruction, but also continues to support them so that they have the access that they need. This question over here, can we offer feedback on student placement? And so what I'll say is for sure. You know, I had a parent reach out, I think maybe earlier this week, giving me some examples as to how they would want their child placed. And so, you know, we'll take the information and make note of it. And so, but we, of course, are going to be creating class lists that are balanced caseloads, classes that are heterogeneous so that we have different levels in a classroom setting. We think that's best practice, and that's what we have found through research works best for children. And so, but if you have feedback to give and you have a scenario or a situation that you would want us to be aware of, I welcome you to send it our way. You can send it to me, you can send it to the site administrator, you can send it to both of us. So we welcome the feedback. This question down here, will we have enrichments and electives? And so again, I'll reiterate that we recognize that the enrichments and the electives from time to time are those classes that actually really get our kids excited about learning, right? It's what drives their passion and maybe why they might want to come to school. And so we wouldn't want to take that away from them. And so really trying to think creatively about how we can offer that during the instructional day, or maybe extending it beyond. You know, we're just really trying to think outside of the box. I'll go back to that notion of thinking boldly. And so just know that those opportunities will still be offered. It is something that our community is very much committed to, and we want to be sure that we continue to provide it to our kiddos. And provide it and set it up in a way that's very visible for our families to know what it is that we're going to be offering to our students so that they can access and continue that love of learning that we know they all have deep inside them. Can we hire KSD staff to tutor, to run pods or childcare? So I think one of the, you know, it's kind of the big elephant in the room, and I don't know if it's an elephant, but the notion that there are these micro-schooling pods systems that are being set up right now throughout our community. It's not just here in Marin County, it's happening all over the state. It's happening, quite frankly, I first heard of micro-schooling on the East Coast about 3 weeks ago. And so, you know, we can't obviously tell people what they can or can't do, but I do want to be really clear that we do have a board policy. It's board policy 4136 related to outside employment or non-KSD employment. And our staff cannot be hired to provide that kind of care during their work hours, right? And so, and that policy also speaks to tutoring, and they actually are permitted per that policy to tutor their own students. And if they are tutoring a student, a KSD student, they actually have to have authorization to do that by administration. And so we really want staff to focus on providing the rich instructional program that we know all of our kids deserve. And so that's where we would want their priorities to be, and just want our community to know that there is clear board policy that we have that was adopted back actually in November of 2015 that prohibits them working in those kind of environments, specifically during the school day, and then the parameters related to any tutoring of their own students. So just for people to have that information. I'll just go off of that one for a minute. What about pods or care provider support? And so just to reiterate again, you know, I do believe that it's important that we are partnering with our parents and guardians of our students and trying to be responsive to parents when they have questions or inquiries about their child's learning. But our staff's job is not going to be the job to be guiding the instruction of any pod teachers other kinds of supports like that during the school day. So definitely having some engagement with the parent and guardians and wanting to support you there, but their job is really focused on being sure they have a robust program that they're offering their students. And so they are not the ones that will be, having to respond to pod teachers or people of that sort. I think I got all of these questions here. And so since I got through everything, I'm going to take a drink of my water and stop sharing and start to take questions from the group. I'll take hands first, and then I will move to the chat. Okay, Laura, you're first. Hi.
Hey, Raquel. Thanks so much. Quick question. In your discussions or negotiations with the union, is there any discussion of whether students who can only commit to distance learning because of health issues, if they'll be assigned to a class with other students who may be coming in person, may not, or if they're going to be separated and in their own track with a homeroom teacher?
I'd rather not, we're just in the process of negotiations. So I'd rather not go into any details of that. I know that is a question that's come up before. And so I think what I've shared before is that what we want to do is that maintaining the connectedness is so very important. And so kids that aren't able to ever return back to campus, right now our plan, because all kids will be distance learning, is they'll be assigned a classroom just like any other child. But in terms of the details about what that could look like when we potentially move into in-person learning and or hybrid models, what that will look like for a child that may not be able to return is still to be determined. So yeah, I'd rather not go into the negotiations piece, but I appreciate you putting that forward.
Will that be addressed when you get the resolution with the negotiations?
Yeah, we'll have more information related to how those children will be served. And again, it's continued in the dialogue right now, and I'm not comfortable digging.
Thank you. As long as there's going to be more information, that's great.
Yeah, not a problem.
Thanks.
Meredith.
Hi, thanks so much again for having these each week. I can't always attend, but they're always so helpful to participate in when I can. I wanted to just understand a little bit more, maybe you can speak a little bit for the Kent Middle School kids. So they have a little bit, they're older, they have a little more ability to be independent, a little more stamina. And I know they have longer hours per the state requirements. Has there been any consideration of a more traditional school day? Some other schools did that at the end of last year during their distance learning. So a more traditional schedule remotely. And I just wanted to know what's the thinking this year with regard to these 90-person multi, there were several classes where the teachers taught multiple classes at the same time, 2 to 3 groups. Is that still on the table, or has that been deemed probably not the most productive way to teach the kids at this age? So maybe just speak a little bit to the Kent perspective, because I think, a lot of the times we've been sort of hearing this maybe from the more younger kids' perspective and their schedules. That would be great. Thank you.
No, I appreciate that. So one of the slides I talked about just a bit was related to the required instructional minutes. So for 4th through 12th grade, the state is requiring 240 minutes of instruction daily. And so we will be meeting that number for certain, right? So then you can assume automatically it will be a shorter day than what you would have had in previous years, because the instructional minutes are a shorter amount per day. That being said, there has been discussion related to kind of what some of the considerations on what's most effective in terms of how many kids are on a Zoom call and part of that instruction with the teacher, and really trying to think through that. I think that it goes back to leveraging our learning from the spring, and where in some scenarios might have worked really well, and some where we might want to tweak that a bit. And I think that speaks to your point, Meredith, is that, will we have these Zoom courses where there are smaller in terms of numbers of students? And so, we're definitely thinking through that so that it keeps kids' attention, and it allows for teachers to see better, like who's who's there and who's really present and actively present. And so I know that was part of the discussion, our instruction committee that met today. The Kent team actually touched on that a bit. So it's definitely part of the discourse. In terms of running a day like a typical middle school day per se, is one of the things that we're thinking about as we think through scheduling is we want to be able to transition between distance learning to in-person instruction as seamlessly as possible. And the way we feel we can do that is if we have a schedule that is able to be mirrored in either environment. And at some level, this kind of touches on Laura's question a minute ago related to the homeroom teacher, is that if we want kids to stay connected and get this sense of continuity, then we want to try to maintain that level of consistency with scheduling for kiddos. And so our thinking is that, one, we don't want kids, staring at a screen for 4 straight hours during the course of the day. But we also want to be sure that we have them engaged and that we're moving them to and from both scenarios. So we've made the decision that we're not going to just kind of run a schedule like we would typically when we're in a middle school environment because it's such a different modality of teaching, but wanting to be sure that we're differentiating the amounts of times that we're utilizing Zoom and the size of the groupings that might be on the conference calls and not. I hope that helps. And I was talking and then I saw you disappear, so maybe you'll come back, Meredith, but that's what I got. Okay, Amy.
Hi, Raquel, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Good, thank you. So I don't know, maybe you've answered this question at a different time, but I'm hearing a lot of use of this instructional minute word, and I'm just wondering if there's a state legally defined definition of the word instructional minute, because certainly when I hear that, I think of live teaching, and I hear you saying that it's probably not going to be 4 hours of live teaching. So what does that mean? And I understand that you're saying we don't want our kids, on the screen all those 4 hours. So, recorded videos to me would be included as screen time. And from my personal experience, live teaching worked much better than recorded videos. So what else is involved in this instructional minutes if it's not live teaching?
I appreciate you bringing that question forward, and I'm going to, because I have it available, I'm going to share my screen really quick so I can speak to this, because I have touched on this before. So if we take ourselves to the place of pretend that we're all back in school, and let's say let's pretend it's the same amount of instructional minutes. When a teacher has a kid for 240 instructional minutes during the school day, they're not going to be standing in front of the child. I would hope not, at least, just kind of lecturing per se during that full 240 minutes. They might do a 15-minute mini lesson where they're doing some direct instruction, and then they may break the kids out into small groups and they're doing independent work, and or they have some support in the class, some centers. It might be differentiated so that it's supporting kids based on their needs. And so that, even though the teacher's not doing that direct instruction in that moment of time, it's still considered part of the instructional day and part of their instructional minutes. So when I speak to those instructional minutes, this slide here talks about examples of what you can expect for distance learning or in-person strategies, right? And so I've touched on this notion of active multimodality approach. And so you might see things like whole group, small group live instruction over Zoom. And that's what we're engaging in right now. You can see screen-free exploratory time for kids, right? So maybe you've said, okay, the assignment is I want you to go around your house and I want you to find 5 objects that, I have, that might rhyme together, and you're working on some kind of, rhyming activity. There might be independent self-directed learning activities. There could be a Zoom session where you're having ongoing student feedback. There could be podcasts that are offered that for auditory learning and some questions that the kids are needing to respond to as they listen to a podcast. There could be recorded videos too. I'm not going to say we're not going to have that. There's some rich recorded videos that were created last year. We want to utilize those, but maybe we're going to have those, and they're also going to be provided with teacher guidance. There's definitely going to be opportunity for peer interaction. formative assessment utilizing digital or screen-free. So this slide here, which is posted on the website as well from last week's presentation, just gives some different examples. I think it's important for us to recognize that when we talk about instructional minutes or instruction, it really comes in a variety of ways, right? It's not going to be just one way. And I think the reason for that is because we know we have different kinds of learners. So I hope that helps a little bit. I can look and see if there's a legal definition. And if I can find it, I will forward it your way, Amy, but that's how I would define it.
And can I just to clarify, like if you, so say I have a Zoom or recorded video saying you need to, write an opinion letter. And so they've watched the video, it's 15 minutes, and then the opinion letter is a half hour, 40 minutes. Does that half hour, 40 minutes become included in instructional time, or is that not included in instructional time?
It could, but I suppose it really depends. Each kid's going to take a different amount of time. So maybe my kid takes 15 minutes to do that. Your kid might take 20 minutes to do that. And so I think that's part of the teacher discretion and thinking through what feels like the appropriate level of time for a child to get done with an activity. And the other piece, and so they might, intervene or work with the child separately or give them a different kind of different kind of assignment. And that goes to the piece where I was speaking to enhancing or intervening based on their need.
Yeah.
But the other thing, I appreciate your questions in the detail. I think part of this too is as we get to engage with our administrators as well as with our teachers related to kind of how this starts to look when we get to embark on it, August 25th until I think that hopefully then you'll have some more specifics from your classroom teachers. But I'm just trying to give some just scenarios, and I hope that's helpful.
Totally. My own personal concern is that if work time is included in the required instructional time, then technically what we could assume as a quote robust teaching experience, you could only really necessarily need a half hour to an hour plus 3 more hours of directed assignment, and it just, I guess, looking toward what we need to expect.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose I don't know that we believe that would be the best thing to do for kids. And I think it'll be important if that's what you're experiencing, that we get the feedback so that we can figure out ways to better support. Based on the crisis assistance learning, I don't think, that was obviously a separate scenario. I guess it's just, knowing like my kids in particular that really thrived on the live learning. Like for me personally, I would hope that it's as voluminous as possible. Yeah, no, for sure. No, I appreciate the feedback and continuing to take that in and think it through as we continue our planning.
Thank you so much, Raquel.
Of course. Kim. You're up. You're muted, so I can't hear you.
There we go.
Oh, great. Hi there.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, hear you great.
All right, thank you. I have 2 questions, and sorry if they were already addressed. I missed the first 10 or 15 minutes of the call. First question is the decision to still not release the class rosters earlier than August 24th or whatever the date is?
Yeah, we are not releasing those early at this point. Part of that reason, and I was asking the team kind of help me understand better around our process. And historically, they have not been released prior to the day before the first day of school. And the reason for that is really related to they're still being created. And there's change that's happening. I mentioned earlier that we have a community survey that's going to be going out to try to get some more information from families that we currently have enrolled in terms of their return. And so that the feedback that we get there may inform our current class list. They're all preliminary, but we anticipate some change, and that's part of the reason that we are hesitant to put those out any earlier.
Meaning that people said that they are enrolling, possibly won't be enrolling?
Yeah, so some families may have over the summer or as the start of the school year comes, they may decide to disenroll their child. And so that would change our numbers, our student enrollment numbers.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't gotten an email, and I haven't heard of, being contacted, or other people, because I know we're enrolling, but saying, are you really enrolling? You know what I mean?
Yeah, let me clarify. I apologize for
Okay.
the confusion. We have not yet sent the survey out. Our plan is to get
Okay.
on the 7th of August, which is, I believe, next Friday. I'll be pushing out a community newsletter, and attached to that is will be a survey that will ask parents to respond to.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, of course, I'll say, you know, on behalf of myself and probably many other people working or not working, you know, the earlier that we do get the class rosters, the better, just to help plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. For childcare reasons too. So.
Mhm.
Then my next question is around, there was a comment made that when the kids do go back in school, that only 12 kids can be in a classroom. So is the schedule gonna be the A-B schedule and divide the class in half? And so the kids will only go to school for, let's say, 2 days a week?
Mhm.
Is that right? Or?
Yeah, so the reason that we shared that 12 number at this time is based on what we believe that we may be able to fit in our classrooms. We are still, I mentioned before, working through with our negotiations with our staff related to kind of exactly what those schedules will look like and the impact on working conditions. So you might have heard different kinds of schedules. That could be an AM PM schedule where 12 kids come in the morning, 12 kids come in the afternoon, or a situation where some kids come Monday, Tuesday, and some kids come Thursday, Friday, for example. And so when we get the opportunity to push out more information related to scheduling, we'll be able to provide more of that detail, but we're not there yet.
Okay. And would you be sending out a survey related to that too? Because I feel like there's going to be a lot of different opinions about AM, PM versus going 2 full days a week.
Yeah. No, and that our community engagement group that's working on the survey will be having some information in their survey that will be getting some of that feedback from parents. And there will obviously always be some kind of open-ended question that people could answer specifically related to their thoughts and feelings on the return to school and what that can look like.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. Thank you. Let's see if I have any more hands. Go down real quick. And I don't see any more hands. So I'm now going to go over to the chat. Oh, technology requirements. So we have the board has approved us moving forward a one-to-one program for our 3rd through 5th grade students so that we will be sure that all of our kids are equipped and outfitted with a Chromebook. And then we have a half-class model for K2 with iPads. And so part of that survey that will be coming out will be asking about parents, families' needs related to the technology and connectivity. And so we're thinking through plans that we'll need to have in place to support families if they don't have a device to utilize at home and or if they don't have access to the internet and such. And so just to know that you'll be getting information about that, and we want to be sure that we're providing that access for people. And again, one is just the access to the devices and the hardware piece, but the other big piece of access is just being sure that kids are engaged in the process. So yes, we will be following up with you on that and equipping our schools with the necessary technology to support our children. So the schedule, as I mentioned before, my hope is next week that I'll be able to provide that. I mentioned I am planning for a newsletter to come out by next Friday. And so if I'm not able to give that information, of course, I'll say that up front, but my hope is that I'll be able to give more details by next week. No, I think in terms of the framework and the overarching operations of our program, I think I've provided that. The more details that people are interested in, my hope is that we would give that before the first week of school. That first week of school information will be more information that you can hear from us about just details related to protocols and procedures, how you might be getting information from your school site, hear more information directly from site administrators than just me. So we're definitely working on trying to be sure you have as much information as we can provide as possible. Our students with IEPs, so they have there's clear services that have been identified for them that they are required to receive. And so in speaking with our interim director today and members of our special education team, they are thinking through how they want to be sure that the services are being provided to our students with IEPs. And also doing that in a way that doesn't take away from those children receiving core instruction, but really getting the additional supports they need. So, so that will be provided. Will we make sure all classroom assignments are accessible? Yes. If there's an issue with an assignment and you're not able to access it because of whatever reason, it will be really important, especially if the student or any student, you should be able to talk to your homeroom teacher about that. And or if the child has a case manager for special education, be sure that that person's well aware of it. But we want to be sure that our children have the access necessary to be able to engage in their learning for sure. So the office hours, so what I'm hoping to do is that next week still plan on something at 4 o'clock. My hope is that we can have the grade level spans versus it be kind of all grade levels. And again, we'll record. I'm not canceling office hours. I'll also send out the reminders accordingly, at least the day before. So you just stay tuned for more information. Related to the summer pilot, we made the decision that based on where we were in our planning, that we needed to press pause on that. Because we just wanted to be sure we had the infrastructure in place. And so it doesn't look like we're going to be able to offer the Jumpstart this year. It's unfortunate that we can't, but just based on not having our full infrastructure in place and having our all the folks that we need to be able to operate the classes and wanting to focus on setting up a really strong program for all of our students, that we've went ahead and pressed pause on that. Working instead on the community engagement piece related to the survey for families, the focus group for students, and thinking through the community information that we're going to be providing through those grade level spans and maintaining these office hours. Oh, current enrollment for kindergarten, you know, I feel like the last number I think I heard, it was either 98 or 101. So I apologize that I don't have it specifically, but it's between that span. I don't know if Lynn is on the call and can raise her hand, but that's what I believe. Oh, Lynn, you're there. Can you share? I think 98 or 101?
Yeah, it's kind of fluctuating right now. It's about 96. We've lost a couple, but we've gained one. So there's a lot of fluidity with that right now. I don't anticipate it going much lower, but it could go higher. I don't know. But that's what I know right now.
Great. Thanks so much, Lynn. I appreciate you jumping in there.
Yep.
Next question, will there be an option for children to write things by hand, especially the younger kids need fine motor, and I don't think things on the iPad. So yes, for sure, we'll have opportunities for kids to write things by hand. And I do know that there was a request to so the grant program that's being offered through our PTA and KIC related to some stylists for our younger grades for the iPad. So that's definitely top of mind for our teachers. We want to be sure the kids are building that fine motor skills. So yes, there will be. Grades. So grades is something that we actually touched on a bit today. I've been in communication with our administrators about it and thinking through how we want to approach grades. And I think one of the things I'll just kind of call out, and I shared this with staff, is grades, they do give a snapshot in time in terms of how a child might have completed a course, and it's really a summative evaluation of how someone did. One of the things we want to also be sure that we're doing is providing formative feedback so that we're helping children make their learning very visible for them so that they understand how they're progressing through the learning process. So acknowledging the importance of grades, but also acknowledging the importance of formative feedback for kiddos, and really thinking through how we're going to be doing that in a regular basis to support our children. And I know it already happens, but just trying to, again, have that be available for folks. So we're still working through exactly what the grading process will look like. Professional learning. So there's a variety of things that are happening related to professional learning. So I just want to remind people that the way our calendars and contracts work is our staff are hired for, it depends on your position, but it could be between 207 to 187 days for a certificated staff member. And so many are, not many, all are typically off during the month right after school lets out in mid-June through July and comes back in mid to late August. So we aren't, they're not required to participate in anything in particular over the summer. That all being said, I want to let people know that the staff have been actively engaged in office hours with me during the course of this summer. We were doing once a week, then we moved to twice a week. I was getting between 30 to 60 plus people on calls for updates. People are independently going out and engaging in training, and it's ranging from being Google certified to social justice training to social emotional learning and trauma training, to training around units of study with Lucy Calkins. There's a interactive science training that folks are going to be participating in next week, culturally relevant teaching training. So a variety of training that's being offered. During the week of August 17th, I'm working with the administrators through to plan some training that we're going to be offering to our teachers, and that's being informed through their feedback and thinking through what kinds of offerings we want to have available for people. So, so there is training. I think part of our profession is we're constantly trying to learn and again hone our craft. And so in terms of an inventory that I can provide people, no, I don't have that, but I do have the faith and the trust that people are going through various trainings independently, and they're tapping into each other's collective wisdom, right? They're talking to each other and dialoguing about what worked, what might not have worked, how might they try something different moving forward. So today I've provided some various resources to staff if they were interested in participating, that they could continue to dig into and to continue to think about new strategies to utilize in a distance learning format. This next question is asking about the electives. And so I did touch on that a bit ago, is that we are really thinking creatively about the ways in which we can offer those electives and enrichments for our kids, because we recognize that that is where some of the passion really lays with our students. And so we want to be sure that we're thinking creatively and out of the box on how we're getting that opportunity available to our students. So, so yes, it is something that is right there, a priority for us to think through. I see a hand, so Virginia. You are up.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. First, I just want to say thanks for all that you're doing to navigate this crazy situation. My question is about the timing on return to in-person learning and whether that's something that's going to happen, you know, just automatically 14 days after Marin is off the watch list, or whether that's a decision that will be made kind of in a discretionary way at that time. And then my second question, which is unrelated, is I have a first grader. So, you know, I guess I'm just wondering what the requirements will be in terms of keeping track of attendance, like whether, you know, if there's going to be a Zoom call every day, whether she's expected to participate in all of those, or whether it's like a check-in X number of assignments on Seesaw, or some other, you know, in the discretion of the teacher. So those are my questions.
Great, no, thank you for that. So to start with the in-person learning, and so as I mentioned before, want to have ourselves in this situation where we can be flexible enough that we could transition when the moment's right. And so the requirement, obviously we have to be off the watch list for 14 days, but there are other pieces that are required related to just our infrastructure and being sure that we have all the pieces in place to support our students and our staff being as safe as possible on our campuses. And so part of our negotiations process is working through what that looks like and what that time frame will be. And so I don't envision it to be something like, today's the 15th day and then everybody tomorrow will be there on campus. I do see that happening as a gradual process, but again, working in collaboration with our families, keeping you guys informed, as well as being sure that we're in collaboration with our staff as we get the opportunity to bring children back to our campuses. So that was one. The second related to the what we can expect for your first grader. So what are the requirements we have? So just for you to note, the instructional minutes, 230 instructional minutes for a day for a first grader in the 2021 school year. The requirement is per the definition of distance learning by our state, Senate Bill 98, clearly says that there must be daily interaction, daily instruction that's happening like over a Zoom format. So you can expect for sure that there will be opportunity on a daily basis where your daughter, I think you said your daughter, will have the chance to interact with her teacher. So it won't be something that, it will be something that's very active. The other part of the process is the notion of attendance that you called out, and part of some of the restricted dollars that were being provided to help support us in creating these programs that are really focused on the needs of our children and meeting and recognizing this unique scenario is this notion of a learning continuity and attendance plan, so that we're very deliberate and intentional about how we're monitoring student attendance and engagement in instruction. And so there will be clear protocols, and that's part of that first week that you all will get information about in terms of what's expected with the student in terms of being sure that we're reporting their attendance and that they're participating. So that, again, will be more in the details related to a day-to-day basis. But yes, there will be accountability for your child to be able to be present for school on a daily basis. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. I don't have any more hands up. And I think I got to all the questions in the chat, and it's 5 o'clock. So I'm going to go ahead and end for now. And I just, before I close and people pop off, I just want to say thank you for your time, your commitment, your patience, and your willingness to listen to me as I rattle quite quickly here. And I know this is tough. It's tough for all of us, but I'm confident we're going to get through. So thank you all. Take care and enjoy the sunshine. Bye-bye.